Good day, everyone. Today, me and my group will present on the topic communication. But first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Nuraza.
I am Nur Anisha Hira.
Hi, I am Nur Amani binti Ahmad.
I am Nur Aina Ibrahim.
So to begin our discussion, we will first define what is communication. So Aina, what do you think? What is communication?
Okay, communication refers to the process by which information is transmitted and understood, which means the essence of good communication between two or more people. Okay, so Anis, under what conditions, if any, do you think it is appropriate or preferable to notify an employee by email that he or she has been laid off?
Well, thank you, Aina, for the question. So it should be noted that to dismiss an employee through an email notification, it should be the last option in the process of termination of that employee, because there are other few methods that are more ideal than through notification email, in which among of them are face-to-face conversation, write a letter to acknowledge on the termination, or to call the employee. So, to answer the questions in which what are the conditions in which an employer can email to the employee regarding his or her termination, is that when the organization undergone financial turmoil or bankruptcy for several quarters until the organization could not afford to provide benefits to the employees. Apart from that, in the case of mass layoff, in which it involved a large number of employees, for example more than 100 workers, where the company could not afford to distribute the acknowledgement letters to every workers, as it involves a larger expenses and costs, and it is also time consuming, and so the best method is through email notification. For example, from what I read, 400 employees at Radio Shack's Fort Worth, Texas, they received an email notification regarding their dismissal as to face the fact that the company has been in financial turmoil. So the second condition is that when the employee itself abandoning the job or keeping silent with reasons unknown. So in this case, the employee is making it impossible for the employer to have a face-to-face conversation, where in this case, the employer actually has no obligation or to wait for the employees to decide to show up. So the employer may come up with a decision to dismiss the employee through the email notification, simply because the employee fails to turn up to his workplace for a long period of time, without even noticing the employee on any apparent or justifiable reasons. And apart from that, the employee also could not be contacted. So the last result would be that the employee may decide to acknowledge the employee regarding his or her termination through an email notification, as it is the only option left. And for the third conditions is when there is a social acceptance. So what is social acceptance? Social acceptance refers to how well the communication medium is approved and supported by the organization, the teams, and also individuals. So in social acceptance, for example, we can say that an organization may opt to use email as a method for distributing the termination notices, and if the email is the preferred method for written business communication, so it may be a common depending on the employment agreement or company policies. Amalia, aside from the symbolic concern, what are the communications problems that might occur when an employer notifies through email?
So thank you, Anis, for the questions. Actually, there's a lot of problems that might occur from the communications. So the first one is the information's overload. According to Forbes Cisco report, the psychology of effective business communications in geographically dispersed teams, it says that organizational effectiveness can suffer when emails and voicemails go unanswered. For this, in which it will lead to information to be overloaded, and this will cause the individuals to overlook some of the messages in the inbox folder. For example, when all the transactions and matters are conducting using the means of email notification, this will lead the employer to receive much information at one time and could not have time to check them one by one. So the employee therefore may overlook the message that acknowledge his or her on the dismissal. The second problem is reduce the politeness and respects. Email are often less diplomatic than written letter because individuals can post email messages before their emotions subside. Also, email has low social presence, so people are more likely to write things that would never be spoken in face-to-face conversation. For example, when the employer fails to inform the employee on his or her dismissal through face-to-face conversations, it is perceived that the employer is not ready to confront the employer to enlighten the employee on the fact that he or she is dismissed. So, as a result, the employee may feel that his previous contributions in the organization is not counted or worthless. Thus, this will lead to the dissatisfactions on behalf of the employee, and he will feel that the employer has no manner or root. The third problem is interpreting emotions or poor medium for communicating emotions. It should be noted that people usually rely on facial expressions and other nonverbal cues to interpret the emotional meanings of words, in which through a face-to-face conversations, it will be able to help the employer to deliver the message in a well-mannered mean which can be accepted by the employee. In contrary, notifications through email will exhibit negative emotions within the employee. So, as all of us know, that a large national sales organization has concluded that active listening is a critical factor in successful sales and customer satisfactions. And now the company now wants you to design a training program that teaches sales staff the main components of active listening. So Azhar, what do you think the specific training activity that would potentially improve the salespeople's performance?
Well, thank you for the question. Active listening is the act of mindfully hearing and attempting to comprehend the meaning of words spoken by another in a conversation or speech. It is a way of listening and responding to another person that helps to improve mutual understanding. So there is a quote saying, "Nature gives people 2 ears but only 1 tongue," which is a gentle hint that they should listen more than they talk. Well, listening is actually a process of actively sensing the sender signal, evaluating them accurately, and responding accurately. Thus, after listeners constantly cycle through sensing, evaluating, and responding during the conversation and engage in various activities to improve the process. There are 3 components of active listening, which are the sensing, evaluating, and responding. So, well, training activity can be defined as sales coaching, where it is based on behavioral modeling. Behavioral modeling or observation learning refers to the way in which we learn from others' experiences. It takes place in 2 steps, which is the acquisition and also the performance. In the first step, we see others act and we acquire a mental picture of the act and its consequences. After that, the mental image is acquired, we perform or try to act ourselves. It should be noted that one of the critical elements in the coaching conference is to use positive reinforcement instead of negative reinforcement. At this can help to strengthen the needed skills of the salesperson in dealing with customers. In many cases, most of the trainers make mistakes in only focusing on poorly performed skill, in which they tend to portray the negative visualization to the participants during the coaching seminars. As a result, the participants tend to remember on the negative conceptualization as they form their own general overview with what has been modeled during the training activity. In the sales coaching session, first the trainer must actually portray himself or herself as a salesperson so that the salespeople, which is the participants, will be able to picture themselves and understand the situation while conducting the businesses. The trainer should able to illustrate to the participant on how to show empathize to the customers, where it need to be sensitive or alert to the feelings, thoughts, and the situation of others. The second one, the trainer should let the participant imagine if they were in the customer or the receiver's shoe, in which how the receiver will encode the message. The next point is the trainer should teach a participant on how to effectively manage the time. This is because it should be noted that the message sent by the salesperson is somehow competes with other people's message and barriers such as noise. Thus, the salesperson should use his time wisely in grabbing the opportunities in order to get the attention of the receiver without any distraction. As for example, by inviting the customer to sit on a chair and discuss in a place with less barriers in order to get a clear conversation. As a salesperson, it is also important to ask for clarification or on whether the customer is able to understand the message delivered to the customer. The second thing that the trainer must do is they need to portray himself or herself as the customer during the workshop, so that the salespeople or the participants will have a wider overview on the acceptance of the customers. The customers also must be able to show empathize, show their interest in listening to the salespeople. When the salespeople are asking for clarification on the message delivered, the customers must let them know whether the message delivered are in line with the customer's understanding. If not, the customers can ask the salesperson to provide more specific example in which this will help to boost the salespeople's performance indirectly. The customers must also provide feedback. By giving feedback, this will allow the salespeople to determine whether the message delivered are clear or not, and to avoid further miscommunication. And lastly, this will also help the salespeople to become more aware with the next customers. So that's about the training activity. Well, there are a certain situation where a resort employs people from at least 8 countries with significantly different cultures. The resort's new management is concerned that communication problems might exist among the employees, but she doesn't know what problems would occur. So, Aina, can you identify and explain further on these communication barriers that might occur due to the culture differences?
According to Jan Hofstede, culture is that what distinguishes one group from another. So, the first point is the language. Language is the main factor which triggers the communication barriers due to cultural differences among the employees. So language is the most vital means in any communication process, as it is part of the culture. Thus, it differs in the difference in cultural perspectives also connotes on the difference in languages. If a resort employs workers from various cultural backgrounds, this will lead to a bigger problem, where the workers themselves may face difficulties in interacting among one another. As a result, the jobs and duties cannot be done effectively, and this will have an effect in the organization. So, the second point is the voice intonation. Voice intonation is somehow relates to the differences in language. Voice intonation connotes on the idea of how loud, deep, and quickly people speak, and it varies across cultures. In addition, the voice intonations send secondary message that have different meaning in different culture. For example, what understood by a Nepalese worker might project a different understanding to an Indonesian worker, even though the interaction is in English language or Malay language. So the third point is the limited vocabulary. Words are easily misunderstood in verbal communication, either because the receiver has a limited vocabulary or because the sender's accent distorts the usual sound of some words. Thus, the result worker, which come from various cultural backgrounds, may not be able to understand what are the message delivered by the employer to him or her, as he or she could not yet master the local language or English language. For example, due to the limited vocab, the worker may not be able to perform the right duties while working. Okay, the next point is the interpretations. Interpretations can be defined as the act or result of giving an explanation of something. It should be noted that different cultures have these different interpretations when it comes to communication process. For example, according to the Japanese culture, talking while someone is speaking is considered as quite rude or has no manner. But in countries like French and Brazil, the people are more likely to interpret it as to the person's interest and involvement in the conversation. Having workers from different cultural perspectives may have effects on how the interaction process works. For instance, some of the workers, especially from the European regions, may be very outspoken in interacting with the customers because their culture encourages them to be very active and outstanding.
Alright, thank you, Aina. So we hope that we have shared some knowledge with you guys, and thank you.